I thought the hardest part about planning a wedding was picking the centerpieces. Turns out the hardest part was discovering who my husband really was during the reception. That anonymous text at 9:47 p.m. didn't just ruin my night, it destroyed everything I thought I knew about love, trust, and the man I just promised forever to. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The Sterling Gardens looked like something out of a fairy tale that October evening. Golden leaves danced in the warm breeze, and the string lights I'd spent months picking out cast this magical glow over everything. My dress felt like silk clouds, my makeup was flawless, and for once in my life, I felt like the princess every little girl dreams of being. Marcus looked incredible in his navy suit, the one his best man Jake had helped him pick out 3 months ago. When we said our vows, his voice cracked a little during the part about being faithful, and I remember thinking how sweet it was that he was getting emotional. Everyone laughed, and I squeezed his hand tighter, thinking I was the luckiest woman alive. The ceremony went perfectly. My maid of honor, Sophia, cried through the entire thing. My parents beamed from the front row. Even Marcus's mother, who'd been skeptical about me from day one, dabbed her eyes with a tissue. When the officiant pronounced us husband and wife, and Marcus kissed me like we were the only two people in the world, I genuinely believed we were. The reception started at 7. The band played our song while we had our first dance, and I felt weightless in Marcus's arms. He whispered jokes in my ear that made me laugh so hard I almost forgot to follow his lead. The photographer captured every moment, every smile, every look we shared. Perfect memories for a perfect night. Dinner was served at 8. Prime rib for him, salmon for me, just like we'd planned during our tastings 6 months earlier. The speeches started around 8:30. My dad talked about watching me grow up, about how proud he was, about how Marcus better treat me like the treasure I was. Marcus's father welcomed me to the family with genuine warmth. Jake, the best man, told embarrassing college stories that made everyone laugh until their sides hurt. But it was during the toasts that I first noticed something was off. Marcus kept checking his phone. Not obviously, just little glances when he thought no one was looking. When I caught his eye and raised an eyebrow, he just smiled and mouthed, "Work emergency," with a little shrug. I believed him because why wouldn't I? Marcus was a financial advisor, and his clients sometimes panicked about their portfolios at weird hours. Around 9, the real dancing started. The DJ played everything we'd requested, and the dance floor filled with our friends and family. I kicked off my heels and danced with everyone. My college roommates, my cousins, even my 70-year-old uncle who still thought he could break dance. Marcus danced with me, spun me around, dipped me dramatically while everyone cheered. But between songs, I noticed him stepping away, always with that phone. Always with that concerned, focused expression that I'd seen 100 times when he was dealing with a difficult client. When I asked if everything was okay, he kissed my forehead and said, "Nothing that can't wait until Monday, beautiful. This is our night." I should have pressed. I should have asked more questions. But I was floating on champagne and happiness and the overwhelming joy of being surrounded by everyone I loved. The night felt magical, untouchable, like nothing bad could possibly happen. At 9:47 p.m., I was sitting at our sweetheart table, taking a breather and watching my new husband dance with his grandmother to some slow Frank Sinatra song. My feet were killing me, but my heart was full. I was scrolling through the photos people had already started posting on social media, grinning at how radiant we looked together. That's when my phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't recognize. No profile picture, just digits. For a split second, I almost deleted it, thinking it was spam, but something made me open it. Check your husband's phone, now. 3rd photo album, folder marked clients. You deserve to know who you really married. My blood turned to ice water. The reception continued around me. Laughter, music, clinking glasses, but everything felt suddenly muffled, like I was underwater. My hands started shaking so hard I could barely hold the phone. I looked up at Marcus, still dancing with his grandmother, looking handsome and happy and completely normal. The man I'd known for 3 years, lived with for 2, just married 20 minutes ago. The man who brought me coffee in bed every Sunday morning and never forgot to text me goodnight when he traveled for work. Someone wanted me to check his phone. Someone knew something I didn't. Someone was telling me that the man I just promised my life to wasn't who I thought he was. I sat there for what felt like hours, but was probably only seconds, staring at the message. My rational brain said to ignore it. Anonymous text on your wedding day? Obviously someone trying to cause drama, maybe an ex-girlfriend or a jealous coworker. People did crazy things sometimes. But my gut, the part of me that had noticed the phone checking, the stepping away, the little moments that didn't quite add up, said something different. My gut said I needed to know. Marcus's phone was in his jacket pocket, hanging on the back of his chair next to mine. He was still on the dance floor, now spinning my niece around while she giggled. It would be so easy to check. Just a quick look to prove the text was nonsense, to put my mind at ease so I could enjoy the rest of my wedding night. My hand moved toward his jacket before I could stop it. The phone was right there, face down, silent. I'd watched him unlock it 1,000 times. His passcode was our anniversary, 0814. He'd never hidden it from me because he'd never had reason to. The music swelled around me. Marcus laughed at something my niece said. The photographer captured another perfect moment of joy and celebration. And I sat there, my husband's phone in my trembling hands, about to discover that some perfect moments are just carefully constructed lies. I should have put the phone back. I should have deleted that text and chosen to trust the man I just married. I should have protected the happiness that felt so real, so solid, so permanent just 10 minutes earlier. But I didn't. I unlocked his phone, navigated to his photos, found the albums, and there it was, exactly where the anonymous texter said it would be. A folder marked Clients that definitely didn't contain anything related to financial planning. What I found in that folder didn't just break my heart, it shattered everything I thought I knew about my life, my marriage, and the man sleeping next to me every night for the past 2 years. But that's where this gets complicated, because what I discovered wasn't just about Marcus, it was about a web of lies so intricate, so carefully maintained that it had fooled everyone who thought they knew us. And the person behind that anonymous text, they weren't trying to help me, they were trying to destroy me. The photos weren't what I expected. They weren't explicit or scandalous in the way that would make sense for blackmail or revenge. They were worse. They were intimate in a way that made my stomach drop to the floor of that beautiful reception hall. Marcus with a woman I didn't recognize, clearly taken over months, maybe years. Not just any woman, but someone who looked comfortable with him, familiar. Someone who knew which side he preferred to sleep on, who knew the way he laughed when he thought something was genuinely funny versus his polite social laugh. Someone who had been sharing a life with him that ran parallel to ours. The timestamps on the photos made everything worse. Last week, when he told me he was visiting his college roommate in Denver, 2 months ago during what I thought was a business conference in Chicago, 6 months back when he claimed his mother needed help moving furniture. Every single trip, every business meeting, every family obligation that had kept me away from me had apparently been spent with her. I scrolled through photo after photo, each one feeling like a physical blow. Her hand on his chest, his arm around her waist, the two of them cooking dinner in what was clearly her kitchen. Marcus reading a book on her couch, looking more relaxed than I'd seen him in months. The worst ones were the candid shots, the ones where they weren't posing but just existing together, looking like a couple who'd been together for years. But the photo that destroyed me completely was the last one in the folder. Marcus down on his knee in front of her, holding a ring box. Not my ring, a different one, but the pose was identical to how he'd proposed to me 8 months ago. Same nervous smile, same hopeful expression, same everything except the woman saying yes. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. The reception continued around me like nothing had changed. The band played our friends' requests. People laughed and danced and celebrated what they thought was the beginning of my happy ending. But I sat there staring at evidence that my entire relationship was a lie, that my husband was living two lives, and that somewhere out there was another woman who probably thought she was his only love too. I tried to make sense of the timeline. We'd been together for 3 years, living together for 2. We'd talked about marriage constantly, planned our future, made joint decisions about everything from apartments to career moves. How had he managed to maintain a whole other relationship during all of that? When did he find the time?
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
How did he keep track of the lies? Then I remembered all the work trips, all the late nights at the office, all the weekends he'd spent helping his family with various crises. Marcus was a financial advisor, but his schedule had always seemed unusually demanding for someone in his position. Now I understood why. He wasn't just managing one life, he was juggling two. The woman in the photos was beautiful in a completely different way than me. Where I was blonde and petite, she was tall with dark hair. Where I preferred casual clothes and minimal makeup, she looked polished and professional in every shot. It wasn't like he had a type and we both fit it. It was like he'd deliberately chosen two people who were nothing alike, maybe to minimize the chances of his worlds colliding. I thought about all the times I'd felt like something was slightly off, all the moments when Marcus seemed distracted or distant. I'd chalked it up to work stress or wedding planning pressure. Now I realized those were probably the times when his double life was getting complicated, when maintaining two relationships was becoming too much even for someone as organized as Marcus. The anonymous texter suddenly felt more sinister. Who had sent it? How did they know about the photos? Were they trying to help me, or was this part of some larger game I didn't understand? I looked up at my new husband, still dancing with my family members, still playing the part of the perfect groom. He caught my eye across the room and winked, that same charming smile that had made me fall in love with him in the first place. The smile that now felt like another lie, another performance, and what I was beginning to understand was an elaborate act. My phone buzzed again, another message from the same unknown number. I'm sorry you had to find out this way, but you needed to know before it was too late. Check his email password recovery questions. Look for anything mentioning Rebecca Chen. That's her name. Rebecca Chen. Now the other woman had a name, which somehow made everything more real and more devastating. I sat there holding Marcus's phone, knowing I should put it down, knowing I should confront him immediately. But part of me needed to understand the full scope of what I was dealing with before I decided what to do next. I navigated to his email, clicked on Forgot Password, and there it was among his security questions. What is your girlfriend's middle name? The answer field was pre-filled from previous logins. May. Rebecca May Chen. Marcus had been so comfortable with his double life that he'd used his other girlfriend's name as a security question on accounts I might see. The casual cruelty of it took my breath away. How many times had I used his laptop or phone for something innocent while that reminder of his betrayal was sitting right there in his account settings? I scrolled through more of his photos, looking for anything that might tell me how long this had been going on. The earliest photo with Rebecca was dated almost 3 years ago, right around the time Marcus and I had started getting serious. We hadn't been exclusive in the very beginning, but we'd had the conversation about commitment about 6 months in. Apparently, Marcus had interpreted that conversation differently than I had. The more I learned, the more questions I had. Did Rebecca know about me? Was she sitting somewhere right now, maybe wondering why Marcus hadn't answered her text today? Or was she in on it somehow, part of some scheme I couldn't begin to understand? I thought about all the friends and family members who had spoken so glowingly about Marcus during the engagement. All the people who had told me how lucky I was to find such a dedicated, trustworthy man. Had any of them known? Had I been the only one living in ignorance while everyone else was in on the secret? Marcus finished dancing with my aunt and started walking back toward our table. I quickly closed the photo album and placed his phone back in his jacket pocket, my heart hammering so hard I was sure everyone could hear it.
When he sat down next to me and kissed my cheek, asking if I was having fun, I managed to smile and nod like nothing had changed. But everything had changed. The man sitting next to me wasn't my husband in any real sense. He was a stranger who happened to be legally bound to me as of 3 hours ago. The reception continued around us, but I felt like I was watching it through glass, separated from the joy and celebration by the terrible knowledge I now carried. I needed to figure out what to do next, but first, I needed to understand exactly what I was dealing with. The anonymous texter seemed to have more information, and despite my instincts telling me not to trust anyone right now, they were the only lead I had to unraveling the truth about the man I just married. I excused myself to the bathroom, claiming I needed to touch up my lipstick. In reality, I needed somewhere quiet to process what I'd discovered and figure out my next move. The bridal suite was empty, a stark contrast to the chaos it had been just hours earlier, when Sophia and my other bridesmaids were helping me get ready. My phone buzzed again with another message from the unknown number. This time, it included an address and a simple instruction. Drive by tomorrow morning. You'll understand everything. I stared at the address, trying to place it. It was in Riverside Heights, about 20 minutes from our apartment, an upscale neighborhood where Marcus had never mentioned knowing anyone. My fingers were trembling as I typed back, "Who are you? Why are you telling me this?" The response came immediately. "Someone who cares about the truth. Marcus isn't who you think he is, and neither is your marriage. Rebecca isn't the only secret he's keeping." Not the only secret? My stomach dropped even further, which I hadn't thought was possible. What else was there? How many more lies was I about to uncover? I splashed cold water on my face, careful not to ruin my makeup, and tried to think clearly. I had options. I could confront him right now, in front of all our guests, and demand answers. I could wait until later tonight when we were alone in our hotel room. I could pretend I'd never seen the photos and try to investigate quietly. Or I could follow the anonymous texter's instructions and see what else I might discover. The smart thing would be to confront him immediately. But something held me back. Maybe it was the way the texter had phrased things, like there were layers to this deception I hadn't even begun to understand. Maybe it was the cold and calculating way Marcus had managed to live a double life for years without me suspecting anything. If he was that good at lying, what were the chances he'd tell me the truth just because I caught him? When I returned to the reception, Marcus was talking with Jake near the bar. They looked serious, not the relaxed, celebratory mood you'd expect from a groom and a best man. As I got closer, I caught the tail end of their conversation. "Are you sure she doesn't suspect anything?" Jake was asking. "Positive. Emma's too trusting. She believes everything I tell her." They both laughed, and the sound felt like ice in my veins. Jake, who had given that touching speech about friendship and loyalty just an hour ago, was apparently in on whatever Marcus was hiding. How many people knew about my husband's secret life? How many people had been laughing behind my back while I planned what I thought was going to be the happiest day of my life? I approached them with a bright smile, playing the part of the blissful bride. "What are you two conspiring about over here?" Marcus wrapped his arm around my waist and kissed my temple. Talking about the bachelor party, Jake was telling me about the photos he forgot to show me. Another lie, delivered so smoothly I almost believed it myself. Marcus had always been good at thinking on his feet, at coming up with explanations that sounded reasonable. Now I wonder how many times he'd use that skill to deceive me. The rest of the reception passed in a blur of forced smiles and mechanical responses. People kept congratulating me, telling me how radiant I looked, how perfect everything was. If only they knew that their perfect bride was fighting the urge to scream or run or both. At 11:30, we finally made our exit. Rice was thrown, pictures were taken, and everyone waved as we climbed into the decorated car that would take us to the Grand Harbor Hotel downtown. Marcus held my hand during the drive, talking excitedly about our honeymoon flight in the morning, about how perfect everything had been. "I can't believe we're actually married," he said, bringing my hand to his lips. "I'm the luckiest man alive." I agreed, to smile, to play along with the fantasy that this was the beginning of our happy ending, instead of the moment when everything started to fall apart. But inside, I was already planning how I would handle the next 24 hours. Our hotel suite was gorgeous, with champagne waiting and rose petals scattered across the bed. Marcus opened the champagne and proposed a toast to our future together. I clinked my glass against his and drank, even though the bubbles felt like acid in my throat. "I'm exhausted," I said. "Do you mind if I take a long bath? It's been such an overwhelming day." "Of course, beautiful. Take all the time you need." While the bath was running, I sent a text to Sophia. "Can you cover for me tomorrow morning? Tell Marcus I went to get coffee with you if he asks. Don't ask questions right now, but I'll explain everything later." She responded immediately. "Everything okay? You seemed off toward the end of the night." "Just need some time to process everything."
I'll call you tomorrow. I soaked in the bath for nearly an hour, trying to figure out how my life had changed so completely in the span of a few hours. This morning, I'd woken up as Emma Rodriguez, excited bride-to-be. Tonight, I was Emma Sullivan, married to a man who was apparently living multiple lives and laughing about how easily he could deceive me. When I finally came out of the bathroom, Marcus was already asleep, sprawled across the bed in his boxers with his phone charging on the nightstand. The same phone that contained evidence of his betrayal, sitting there innocently like it hadn't just destroyed my entire understanding of my relationship. I lay awake most of the night, staring at the ceiling and listening to Marcus breathe peacefully beside me. How could he sleep so soundly? How could he be so completely untroubled by the lies he was living? Either he was a sociopath, or he'd compartmentalized his deception so completely that he could genuinely forget about Rebecca and whatever other secrets he was keeping when he was with me. At 6 a.m, I slipped out of bed and got dressed quietly. Marcus stirred, but didn't wake up. I left a note saying I'd gone for coffee with Sophia and would be back soon, then took a taxi to Riverside Heights and the address the anonymous texter had given me. The house was a beautiful 2-story colonial with a perfectly manicured lawn and flower boxes in the windows. A BMW was parked in the driveway, and through the front window, I could see someone moving around inside. It looked like the kind of place where a successful young couple might live, the kind of place Marcus and I had talked about buying someday. I parked across the street and waited. Not sure what I was looking for, but knowing I needed to see whatever I was supposed to see. At 7:15, the front door opened and a woman came out. Rebecca Chen, unmistakably the same woman from the photos on Marcus's phone. She was even more beautiful in person, tall and elegant, in a way that made me feel small and ordinary. She got into the BMW and drove away, probably heading to work at whatever job had allowed her to afford this house. I sat there for another 10 minutes, trying to process what I was seeing. Marcus had another life here, a whole other existence with another woman in another house in another part of town. The scope of his deception was staggering. This wasn't just an affair or a casual relationship he'd been hiding. This was a complete double life, maintained with a level of organization and commitment that was almost impressive in its audacity. My phone buzzed with another message. "Now you see." But that's still not everything. Rebecca thinks she's his only girlfriend too. She has no idea about you. Check the public records for this address. Look up who owns this house. I used my phone to access the county property records, searching for the address I was parked in front of. When the results came up, I had to read them 3 times before they sunk in. The house was owned by Marcus Sullivan and Rebecca Chen. Joint ownership, purchased 18 months ago, 6 months after Marcus and I had moved in together. He'd bought another house with another woman. We'd been living together, talking about marriage, planning our future, while he was literally building a life with someone else. The property records showed a mortgage in both their names, utility accounts set up for both of them, all the mundane documentation of a committed relationship. This wasn't just an affair. Marcus was essentially married to both of us, just without the legal paperwork in Rebecca's case. I sat in my car outside what was apparently my husband's other home, Married less than 12 hours and already discovering that everything I thought I knew about my life was wrong. The anonymous texter was right. This was bigger than I'd imagined, more complicated and more devastating than a simple case of cheating. The question now was what I was going to do about it. I drove back to the hotel with a plan forming in my mind. Marcus was still asleep when I returned, exactly where I'd left him. I sat on the edge of the bed and gently shook his shoulder. "Marcus, wake up. We need to talk." He opened his eyes slowly, that sleepy smile I used to find endearing, spreading across his face. "Good morning, Mrs. Sullivan. How was coffee with Sophia?" "I didn't go for coffee," I said quietly. "I went to Riverside Heights. To your other house. The one you bought with Rebecca Chen?" The color drained from his face so quickly I thought he might faint. He sat up abruptly, running his hands through his hair, that calculating look I now recognized crossing his features, as he tried to figure out how to handle this. "Emma, I can explain everything. It's not what you think." "Really? Because what I think is that you've been living a double life for years, that you bought a house with another woman while telling me you loved me, that you proposed to her while planning our wedding. What part of that am I getting wrong?" He was quiet for a long moment, and I could practically see the wheels turning as he tried to come up with a story that might salvage this. Finally, he looked at me with something that might have been relief. "You're right, about all of it. I never meant it for it to happen this way, but once it started, I couldn't figure out how to stop it without hurting everyone." The casual admission hit me harder than any elaborate lie would have. He wasn't even going to try to deny it. 3 years of my life, and he was giving up the pretense with barely a fight. "How long?" I asked. "Since the beginning, almost. I met Rebecca around the same time I met you. I fell for both of you in different ways, and I convinced myself I could make it work somehow." "And Jake knows?" Marcus nodded miserably. "He's been covering for me when I needed alibis. He thinks I'm an idiot, but he's my best friend." I stood up and walked to the window, looking out for the city where my husband had been living 2 completely separate lives. "Who sent me the text last night?" I asked. "I don't know. Someone who found out, obviously. Maybe someone Rebecca knows or someone who saw us together somewhere." "What happens now?" Marcus was quiet for so long I turned around to look at him. He was staring at his hands, looking more defeated than I'd ever seen him. "I don't know," he said finally. "I love you both. I know that sounds impossible, but it's true. I never wanted either of you to get hurt. But we are hurt, Marcus. We're both hurt, and we're both going to be even more hurt when this all comes out. Because it is coming out. I can't pretend I don't know about this." He nodded slowly. "What are you going to do?" I thought about Rebecca, waking up in the house she shared with my husband, probably wondering why he hadn't come home last night. She deserved to know the truth just as much as I had. Whatever Marcus had told her about his absence, she was living the same lie I'd been living. "I'm going to tell her," I said. "She has the right to know." "Emma, please, can't we figure out something else? Maybe we could all talk together, find some way to make this work." I stared at him, amazed that even now, caught in the most devastating lie imaginable, he was still trying to manipulate the situation to his advantage. "No, Marcus, there's no making this work. You married me yesterday while living with another woman. You can't come back from that." I started packing my things, moving mechanically through the motions of ending what was supposed to be the beginning of my new life. Marcus sat on the bed, watching me, occasionally offering weak protests or impossible solutions. When I was done packing, I turned to face him one last time. "I'm filing for annulment on Monday. I'll have my lawyer contact you about dividing our things." "Emma, wait. Can't we at least try counseling? This doesn't have to be the end." "Yes, it does. It ended the moment you decided to live 2 lives instead of choosing one." I walked out of that hotel room and didn't look back. The marriage that had lasted less than 12 hours was over. But for the first time since receiving that anonymous text, I felt like I could breathe again. The truth had destroyed everything I thought I wanted,
but it had also set me free. And sometimes freedom is worth more than a beautiful lie.